Welcome to episode 30 of Rubbish Talk with myself, Alistair Meldrum.
And myself, Jane Bond.
And this week we have Robert Robb from North Ayrshire Council. So Robert's the Waste Resources Strategy and Contracts Manager. So before we go into that, a couple of bits of news from the sector that have happened. One that we've talked lots about that Jane's going to bring up.
Yes, well, we've all heard about the disposable vapes ban, which, we all had a little bit of a dance about. And, the ban in the UK is part of ambitious government plans to tackle a rise in youth vaping and protect children's health. Doesn't say anything about waste management, but anyway, perhaps if you focus on the human health, it's more sexy than the waste management side of it. So there's new powers to restrict vape flavours, introduce plain packaging and change how vapes are displayed in shops. And the new law will make it illegal to sell tobacco products to anyone born on or after the 1st of January 2009, which is quite that's the one they kind of went on and on about, wasn't it? So that by the time you're 80, you still won't be able to buy any tobacco if you were born in 2008. So yeah, interesting. We'll see how that works.
That one about the smoking is a policy that is Australia and New Zealand introduced, and then they introduced it and then they've removed it again.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, the ban's no longer in place there, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how quickly. I don't know if you picked up, Jane, but I never picked up when this ban's happening. I would think it's very much a political thing before an election, but it'll be interesting to see when they're actually physically going to ban these things, because I don't hear much out there in the sector about shops panicking.
Yeah, I'm just having a quick look. It doesn't actually say. Just says new powers will be introduced and crack down on this and crack down on that. But
so the cynic in me says until it happens, it's not happened, and we need to keep an eye on it. So I think watch this space. And then the second one I'd picked up is this. Greater Manchester Combined Waste Authority has got approval for 2 dry anaerobic digestion plants. So normally an anaerobic digestion plant is wet, it's a big soup, but you can have anaerobic digestion that's dry. Now the title is a bit misleading because it talks about the first UK dry AD process in the UK. But as we know, one of our customers, Sereco, that's an arm's length company for Fife Council, has had a dry AD plant for probably at least 10 or 12 or maybe even 15 years. So good news for Manchester if they can get approval, but they're not the first in the UK.
That's right. We can claim that Scotland are the first, not England.
Yep. Well, we'll not bother writing them. We'll just raise it, highlight it here.
Yeah, that's right. We won't write and tell them how wrong they are. The other one, which is particularly, I suppose, relevant, is there was an ENDS report just that came out, and it's basically saying that the Environment Agency firms have been waiting for all sorts of information, about 20 months for permits to be it says one currently has one permit that's been with the agency for 20 months, so presumably it hasn't been determined yet. I mean, we're having issues because the Environment Agency for one of our clients says they're not even going to duly make the application put for 38 weeks. I mean, that's shocking. I mean, there's things here which says, how can businesses carry on when they're waiting that long to get a permit for the one that we're looking at isn't even it's not even a controversial site in any way whatsoever. So yeah.
It's a real barrier to investment for these companies where totally. They invest money to improve the site or to improve a process, and if they can't get approved, technically they've got to, what the article's basically saying is, they've either got a choice of operating illegally as an out with a permit, or they've got to stop their operations. So it's a real difficulty. But on a similar vein, I've had discussions with the consultations we mentioned in the previous podcast about SEPA. there's a lot of work needing done with what they're proposing in terms of the new permits and so on. We've got all the BAT requirements for the PPC permits. You actually just wonder if organisations like SEPA, like the Environment Agency, are being fully resourced to do what they're being asked for of. Consultations we mentioned in the previous podcast about SEPA. There's a lot of work needing done with what they're proposing in terms of the new permits and so on. We've got all the BAT requirements for the PPC permits. You actually just wonder if organisations like SEPA, like the Environment Agency, are being fully resourced to do what they're being asked for of. This is obviously, with the Environment Agency, it's obviously not a sudden thing. If people are waiting 20 months, how long has that been building? Is there still a hangover from COVID? Is it just lack of resources in terms of staff? Is it lack of finance? It is quite concerning for the sector.
Yeah, and I think it's waiting even 38 weeks before it even gets allocated to an officer. They must be really struggling for resources.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. And I think the voices about it are getting a bit louder as well. They're just, up till recently, there's not been much comment about it, but people are raising concerns. So hopefully SEPA, we generally work in Scotland, hopefully SEPA is not going to be quite as slow as that, but we can live in hope.
Well, I don't think SEPA are as slow as that, are they? They're a bit, I think often the trouble with the Environment Agency, it's so big and it's trying to find the right person to answer the right question. Whereas SEPA, you kind of feel you can get the right person to answer the right question. Whether they answer it or not is a different matter, but,
Yeah, or at least people that you can ask who's the right person to speak to that. So, all good. Anyway, that's all for industry news. A couple of Albion bits of news. So we have a new employee, Mia Sutherland. So Mia has joined us from South Ayrshire Council, actually. I hope our customers worked out. It wasn't at the waste management side of South Ayrshire Council, so hopefully we'll be forgiven. So Alicia moved on to Pastors New. Myself and Jane had obviously raved about the value of knowledge transfer partnerships that we've had a few of, and managed to get herself a knowledge transfer partnership. So she moved on earlier in the year. So Mia has just started to take on that role. So welcome to Rubbish Talk Podcast, Mia. We'll try and educate you in the way of rubbish. The other thing I mentioned last time, Dundee bin app is now live and going. So if you're in Dundee area and you want the app, get it downloaded. We'd love to hear your feedback. Another news about that, and I think again I mentioned previously, it was South Ayrshire Council have extended for another 3 years. So if you're in South Ayrshire and you don't have the app, again, download it and would welcome your feedback. And if anybody else is out there in areas where you think an app would be really useful for us, then please get in touch. We're quite happy explaining how it works, explaining the work involved in setting it up and so on.
Yes, and I keep going on about East Ayrshire. East Renfrewshire. Sorry, East Renfrewshire. We didn't nap because I didn't even get me calendar. Normally, I get a calendar with me bin at the beginning of the year. I didn't even get a calendar, so I'm just hoping my neighbours are putting the right bins out on the right days.
That's because it costs you tens of thousands to send calendars out by post, Jane.
Well, I know.
Councils haven't got tens of thousands.
They probably say go and look on the website and say, right, okay.
They do.
So on that, kind of going back to that, I had my 5-year anniversary, didn't I, Asta? 5 years I've been with Albion now. So, and it's gone in a blink of an eye, and we've got a few jobs open still. So if anybody wants to join us, we've got senior environmental consultant. So we're looking for somebody who knows all about waste and can write a good report. And we've got one still out for assessment and certificate of technical competence assessment, isn't it?
I meant to use what I meant to use now. CIWM in brackets WAMATAB assessor. So the certificate of technical competence assessors were looking for somebody, and that one can either be, we've got options in that one. Quite often they're sort of subcontract positions rather than salaried positions. And that's it from us. So we're going to move over to Robert Robb, as I said at the start. So unknown to me, Robert Robb started his life as a bin man. So we delve into stories about collecting bins from the rich and famous and lots of other stuff. So we have a really interesting chat with Robert.
Hi Robert, nice to see you. How are you?
Not so bad, not so bad. That's about as good as you get with me, Jane. Not so bad.
That's quite a good. That's quite a good welcome for you, Robert.
Well, it's funny. See, in terms of, I suppose, psychology in Scotland, a lot of people say not so bad. So we start off with a negative. Instead of saying, well, I should be saying this, I'm very good, Jane. So I'm very good, Jane.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're very good rather than not so bad. So we're going to have a chat about you, yourself, your job, and anything else that we can think of related to the waste industry or anything interesting that you've got to tell us. But firstly, could you give us a bit of a chat and tell us about you currently work for, and a bit of background of the organisation and kind of what you do?
Yeah, so I work for North Ayrshire Council in the waste and street scene service, and within that we work in an area called Strategy and Contracts. And as I say, we look after, believe it or not, strategy, contracts, commercial waste, compliance with commercial waste duty of care, and domestic waste awareness in terms of communicating our services with members of the public. Also oversee a kind of woodlands project. So the council have committed to planting 106,000 trees by 2030. Like I think the majority of local authorities in Scotland, so we'll look after that. So yeah, I've been here 11 years. No, it's actually more, just 12 years. But before that, I worked for Western Barnsley Council in a similar role, and East Ayrshire Council in a similar role. And before that, I basically started with KLDC. I started with KLDC in 1988 for 2 weeks, and I'm still here.
You're going to need to tell us who KLDC is, Robert. I think I'm going to guess that it's Kilmarnock and Loudoun District Council, but
it is so.
Really?
Go.
Right,
there you go, Jane. You're not impressed that I knew that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The only reason I knew that is my first the contract I had with Bar Environmental was with East Ayrshire Council, and they'd only very recently merged as one, and it was Cumnock and Doon Valley and Kilmarnock. Was it Kilmarnock and Loudoun District Council? And the mad thing was that used to drive me nuts and annoyed me for 5 years was, and I can't remember which way it was, Robert, but the Kilmarnock ones would work Boxing Day, but not the 2nd of January. And the Cumnock ones would work Boxing Day or vice versa. So they were always, so whatever, from a bar point of view, we had to be open both these days because they couldn't agree between themselves which day they would have off.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still the case, but it was the case 20 years ago when I was a bar.
Frankly, it may well be. I think when the two councils came together in 1996, there was some working together agreement to harmonise across loads of different services in Cumnock and the Kilmarnock area. And sometimes that's more difficult than you think, but you can imagine if you're looking from the outside, it must look quite frustrating because it's been the same workforce for nearly 30 years now, and there probably is differences, kind of wee nuances. See, and Cumnock, if you think of Cumnock's got a bigger link to Ayr and Ayr holidays, which are slightly different from clearly the Kilmarnock, and the villages outside Kilmarnock have got links to Kilmarnock. There's actually the village I stay in, which is north of Kilmarnock, has actually got a closer link to Glasgow holidays because it's up the Glasgow road, and people always link themselves to kind of the lower Newton Mearns, as we say, as a joke. It's nowhere near Newton Mearns. But it's amazing how those things have carried over for 30, 40, normally carry over for a generation or so, and then the kids don't know what the Killie Fair is, or the Ayr Fair, or the Glasgow Fair, and all that kind of stuff. So harmonising it can't be easy.
It's great. When I came up to Glasgow and they kept talking about the Glasgow Fair, I was expecting this great big, carnival or whatever, and it was a bit disappointing when I realised it was just a bit of a holiday. Well, it was very nice having a holiday.
It's not, Jane. It's when the rain starts in Glasgow.
Does the rain stop, Alistair? Sorry.
That's normally when the rain starts. The start of Glasgow Fair.
And the good thing about July is the first 2 weeks of the Killie Fair when it rains, and then the next 2 weeks of the Glasgow Fair when it rains. So the first 4 weeks of the 6-week school holiday, it rains basically. Although it's been decent over the last few years.
You've been trotting around quite a few local authorities then, Robert. So you've obviously seen quite a few changes in the different ways that councils work, but also the different ways of different changes over the years, particularly if you've been there since late 80s and, and up till now, all of recycling and everything like that. I was interested when you said trees, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realise that perhaps I'm just a bit, behind the times, but I didn't realise the councils had to plant that many trees. That's a lot of trees. Where are you putting them?
Well, we're assessing. I think we've already planted about 30,000 trees. Council owns a fair bit of land, and it's got various partnerships, and there'll be various bits of land that are already kind of set out for maybe housing or industrial use, and so they've got to kind of review that and set land aside. So when for instance, they're building big schools and knocking older schools down, some land becomes available. So it's very interesting. It's very dynamic. You just think, all right, no problem, we'll plant 100,000 trees. But I have to say, thank the Lord, we've got 6 years to do it. I didn't know, and frankly, I didn't know you can only plant trees at certain times of year. So you can only plant them during that kind of winter season, up to spring. So you can have a big procurement process that ends in May, and you've got to wait 5 months to see a plant. So it's one of these interesting kind of dynamics when you oversee other areas that you didn't know at the time.
Is it all types of trees or specific?
Yeah, no. It's a variety of trees. We're also working with, I think, up to currently maybe 6 or 7 kind of local groups. There's 3 or 4 orchards getting built, which will feed into the food supply in those areas. Feed into villages and towns, and they can maybe supply whatever fruit we can grow in sunny Scotland. But it's really good. It has a link to the food strategies as well. There's no all waste.
Is that just North Ayrshire Council, Robert, or the other councils signed up to? I know South Ayrshire do a bit, but I'm not sure it's that size or scale.
Yeah, no, I think it's virtually
across the board.
If you take out the cities, or the main, the original cities, I think the vast majority have similar or bigger commitments. It's through funding from the Scottish Government. It's their commitment to carbon and help, that whole strategy.
Well, my little tree is in North Ayrshire someplace. So I do this thing that I think we've talked about before. It's called Trees Not Teas. So when you sign up at a race, you quite often get a free T-shirt or whatever. And quite a lot of the races are now giving you the option where this organisation will plant a tree for you. Mm-hmm. And once they plant the tree, they'll send you a wee picture of this wee sapling. So I do have someplace on my computer a wee picture of a wee sapling, someplace in North Ayrshire.
Oh well, North Ayrshire is a lovely place to plant a tree. So you should go and visit it and try and support the local economy when you can.
Well, what they should really do is give me the 3 words code to it, and then I could go and visit it. And
you could go and visit your tree.
I'll probably find it's dead or something.
Yeah. Well, there's like 20 or 200 other trees. You're not quite sure which one.
Do
put your name on it.
Do you know the genesis of that 3 words and how it actually started working?
No.
Have we had this conversation?
No.
Right, so the 2 chaps that invented that were struggling for people to take it on. And the authorities in Outer Mongolia contacted them because in Outer Mongolia is basically the third house up by the river next to the yellow tree. And because they've not got postcodes, or what we would call postcodes, or zip codes, so they worked it there and mapped all that place out. And from there, other countries said, "Oh, that could work for us." It's a great wee story of how something that was potentially struggling, got off the ground.
Mm-hmm. I know from some of the sort of mountain rescue stuff and so on that to a certain extent they like it, but to a certain extent, if you get a word wrong, you can be sent 100 miles in the wrong direction. So
yeah,
a lot of them are like, "What's wrong with a good old-fashioned grid reference?" Because
yeah,
what that does.
In the interview, I heard the guy explain one like that. There's a place in the UK, I don't know, it's like coffee, milk, sugar, and there's a place in Italy, coffee, sugar, milk, or something like that. So that they'd work some kind of algorithm to try and reduce that happening. I mean, I don't know how successful that is. I don't know if I've ever used it. I think I maybe used it once and thought, no, I'll just look at the window and find the place that I'm looking for.
I used it yesterday. I had to drop somebody off who was trying to meet his wife, and that's where she sent him the what 3 words. So I had to use the what 3 words to go and find her to drop him off. So
good.
Very clever.
Yeah. Anyway, so local authorities, Robert, what got you into? Did you fall into waste management, or did you plan it from childhood?
Well, I actually think there's loads of things that have happened in my life that make working in the waste management industry a good place for me, and that's really how you try to understand perspective. So that's linked to the mindfulness gap. But the reason I started, and I'll probably be quite unique because I've listened to most of your podcasts. I actually started as a binman in 1980, as I say, for a fortnight, and I'm still there. And the reason I got the job was because I was working somewhere else. I was working in a slab making factory. And it was the first time that I'd ever been involved in a repetitive process, and it's really boring. So, I pressed a button, it brought down a ton of gravel. I pressed another button, it brought down a half a ton of sand. Then another button for cement. Poured water for 3 minutes into the biggest food mixer in the world. Released that. Then it went down and expressed it into, 2x2 slabs, and then you went down, tied it off, and put it in the drying area, then went back up. So I was doing this all the time. And to cut a long story short, it was run by a father and son, and the father was away on holiday, and I had to go to a funeral of a family friend. So I asked his son if I could get the day off. Everything was fine, went to the funeral, and 2 weeks later his dad came back and pulled me out of the office and said, "Listen, I'll need to let you go. You had a day off." I said, "I was at a funeral." He said, "We don't give days off for funerals." I said, "But your son did." He said, "No, we shut down in 2 weeks in July for maintenance, 2 weeks in Christmas, and a couple of random days, like 23, 24 days. I said, "But your son did agree." And he said, "No, he didn't." And that's a kind of a life lesson in terms of the guy made a mistake and just couldn't admit it. So we all make mistakes, and it's about trust. So about 3 or 4. About 5 or 6 weeks later, I got offered a job as a binman with KLDC. And most of you are too young, but Alistair will remember. Back in the day, you basically used to collect black bags from people's back doors. So you went up 42 steps, round past an Alsatian, tripped over a couple of broken slabs that I probably made the year before, and picked up 2 or 3 bags, and then carried them out to a kind of central point, or you put it into an open back RCV. And part of the reason I got the job is the council were considering, and it took a long time to add new technology, bin lifters, then eventually go to bins. And back in the day, there was the cleansing, as it was called, had quite a significant workforce, and we basically started at 5 o'clock in the morning and finished at 12. And when we were going to go to wheel bins eventually, we couldn't ask people to have bins out for 5 o'clock in the morning, so it was going to be 73. So unbeknownst to the managers at the time, there was loads of guys, and it was mainly guys at the time, that had other jobs. Some were taxi drivers for 1 o'clock. Some had looked after family, or picked up kids and stuff like that. Some were plumbers, but there was one guy that was a fireman. and he'd worked it. He'd that late shift for 2 whatever it was. So he had 2 jobs, so he had to leave, and that left space for, I think they took about 28 on, then eventually maybe only kept, I don't know, 12 on. So it was just, fortune. And by that time I had the golden handcuffs, and I quite liked it. It was, a great job being a binman. We used to maybe walk 7 or 8 miles a day, maybe more. And it really kept us healthy. And when you're around back doors, and really, it was quite surprising. Sometimes, if I was maybe speaking to an elderly lady, I'd be the only person she would see every week. She'd look forward to you popping on her door at 11:30 in the morning, trying to offer you biscuits and stuff like that, and you just wanted to go on. So it was very interesting, and I really enjoyed it. And I must have done it for 4 or 5 years. A kind of funny story about that is, in the first 3 or 4 weeks, I think it was the first 3 or 4 weeks, I collected waste from a Hollywood actress and a Scottish guy who sold 60 million albums. Can you guess who they are?
No. Give us a clue.
Simple Minds.
All right, okay.
So Jim Kerr and what's her name? Patsy Kensit were together at the time, and they lived south of Glasgow. I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks or 10 weeks of the year, and on behalf of maybe Eastwood Council at the time, KLDC collected it because our road didn't have a bridge; it was falling apart. It was all right for cars coming in for the Glasgow side, but you couldn't send over a 25-ton lorry. So we collected that, and again, I suppose that gives you a bit of perspective, because frankly they weren't throwing out caviar and Bollinger. It was just a couple of bags every other week, and it was so it was good to to be really close to multi-billionaires during my refuse collection days.
You can say, well, I've been to their house. That's quite a claim to fame, isn't it?
Also, I suppose one even closer, in the next village to me, the actor Gregor Fisher, who played Rab C. Nisbet, he's stayed there for, I don't know, 10 or 20 years. It's just, it's this waste management industry. You just touch superstars all the time.
Everybody's got rubbish, haven't they? To be honest, nobody's any different. Mm-hmm. Do you know what? We've been doing some training for bin men just recently, and I actually find it fascinating. I'm going to actually ask them to see whether they get any little old ladies with cups of tea and biscuits. Although I don't think they'd be allowed to stop.
Well, I think nowadays. I think nowadays, I suppose that's what I was touching on, the process that was involved in that slab making factory. When it went to wheeled bins, it's just like a factory job now. You basically just grab 2 bins, move them off the curb, put them on the vehicle, then put them back. And I suppose your only interaction is with your work colleagues. People are away at their work, and they take the bins out on your behalf, which, if I remember right, cost a right stooshy back in the 90s when we stopped going into households for black bags. It's that kind of, everybody's entitled to, the council should come into my back door and tidy it up and take these 3 or 4 bags covered in cat's piss out instead of me filling a bin. It's just, and now people are kind of used to it. They put the bins out, and there's little interaction. I suppose one of their changes for that is used to get loads of tips. That's
what I was going to say, Robert. I remember the bin lorries coming in, and particularly at Christmas, and cans of beer and bottles of this and that, and that was the tips they acquired on the way. Now they're not allowed that because it's alcohol in a vehicle, and if they took that, they get the sack, or they get suspended for having alcohol in a vehicle. So
but back in the day, we probably used to get the equivalent of 2 weeks' salary in money at Christmas time, and it was quite funny. The guys, I was quite new to it, for the first couple of winters, and the guys on the normal cruise wouldn't take any days off in December at all in case they missed out on a tip. So we used to get chunks of money, as you say, chunks of beer and stuff like that. I've seen some of my neighbours giving it. I throw the odd case out for the guys what they do about it. I don't know. It's just clearly nice to show a bit of gratitude, because it can be quite a mind numbing job doing that 500 or 600 times a day, because that's all you do. I'm actually making kind of movements here that are not really good for a podcast. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm moving.
I know what you mean. You're putting that bin in that bin list, Robert. You've got the action there.
Yeah, there's some quite interesting stories, and that like you say, it's hard work.
Yeah,
particularly in some of the sort of lanes and stuff around Glasgow where you've got to, where it's all cobble streets and you can't get bin lorries down, and you're trying to pull bins out and up steps and down steps and round corners and all sorts of stuff. So I've got a lot more respect for binmen since I've been doing this training.
So, well, I was a binman I was probably a binman for 5 or 6 years, but the last 2 years, actually, me and another guy, they chose us to survey all the households in KLDC. And it was exactly what you're saying, Jen. Jane, it was about the lanes. They didn't have any knowledge of lanes, whether there was steps, how many people were in the house. It was a usual kind of council at that time. Didn't have great data. So we basically assessed them for, I don't know, it probably took us 8 months. And then there was some other office work after that. So we assessed them whether they needed a larger bin or a smaller bin, because they may be single individuals and stuff like that. That was before East Ayrshire came into existence, and I started with East Ayrshire as a recycling officer. I remember that the week I got a recycling officer's job, I also got offered the job as a driver. And that was the natural progression. You were a binman. If they had enough money, they trained you to be a driver, and you'd made it. And I got offered the job as a waste technician, which was more in your side, Alistair. It was, it's like monitoring landfill sites and dealing with, commercial customers and various other things. So I chose the recycling officer job because I'd done a bit of research, and there was loads of stuff coming out of Europe at the time, and I thought, that's cracking. And virtually 2 months into it, the UK government decided to derogate some EU legislation for 4 years. And, and there I was, batting my head against a brick wall for 4 years. Every time, and I can't remember the EU legislation. At the time, the UK decided to derogate it so they could tidy up the landfill tax and move that as a driver and various other things. And they're probably right to do it. But during that 4 year, every wee report I wrote as a recycling officer, I always said, who says this in Europe? You've got to do this. And everybody was not inclined because there wasn't a driver. It was cheap as chips to landfill. And why would you? And I suppose that takes me back to my, when I was a refuse collector. The stuff that I threw in a vehicle as a binman was criminal. Metal, classic furniture, loads of stuff of value. So I'm glad we've kind of changed that and turned that around.
Do you think we've turned that around enough, though, Robert?
No, we've not turned that around enough. What are we now? 50% or round about that. And I suppose the waste composition analysis suggests there's 60% left in there. We'll not get that 60% out. We've got to remember who we're dealing with and the type of materials that are going in there. But we clearly should get out the 30% that's food waste, or roughly that, and maybe another, 5 or 10% of decent dry recycling. The rest is really bad designs. People just don't understand what they're meant to do with multi-polymers, with, a metal thing with a piece of paper on it, all that kind of stuff. So, no, I think to me, it's immoral that a lot of people don't use food waste. So I moved into a new estate 5 years ago, and I only know because of the planning permission. There's 250 houses exactly. So I do, we always used to do a busman's holiday. I do a busman's walk with my dog, and I go, there's not enough food waste out here. They all seem to be doing really well in terms of dry recycling, as much as you can. It looks very clean for what I can see. Bear in mind the system we've got, it's the kind of trolley system. But if food waste, it's really difficult to trip over a food waste caddy, even in my estate. And this is the next generation, plus a couple of older guys like me. As I say, it's immoral, because we in the UK and Scotland, we've got the privilege to actually produce food waste, and we really should be recycling it for all the energy and environmental gains. One of the other things in terms of when you start recycling food waste is you guys will know, you actually notice what you're putting in it, so you change your purchasing practices. Whereas if everything goes in the bin and people are less inclined, it's really difficult for it to pull them back for that. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people that have challenges, that live chaotic lives, and what they want to do is get to the end of the day. I get that, there are, but there's a lot more that people outside that kind of spectrum can do.
You're talking, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
You're talking to the converted here on that one, Robert. I just have doubts that Scottish Government, local authorities actually do enough in that space to remind the public that, yes, you should be using your food waste. I think a vast majority of the public are oblivious to the environmental benefits of using the food waste system, and they think it doesn't apply to them.
Yeah, so I think what will come out, hopefully, the consultation of the circular economy bill and the route map will move that on. It needs to be probably moved on at a national level with national comms and stuff like that, but it'll provide tools for local authorities to push that forward and provide, I suppose, opportunities for us to improve that. But there are probably things in the circular economy bill, like, I don't know, let's just say penalties and stuff like that you've got to remember, local authorities are here to support vulnerable people. The likelihood of people that could be penalised for no following directions are vulnerable. So you'd be chapping the door as a social worker, supporting them, giving them housing benefit, try to support them into employment. Then a couple of waste technicians rock up and chap the door and say, I'm going to fine you for that. So I'm not convinced that is the right way to do that. But who knows? It'll be up to the chief officers and the elected members to look at the powers and use them if they see fit.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Robert. But I still think there's low-hanging fruit there. You mentioned your 250 households estate. They're not all living in the breadline, and the thing, there's people there that a bit of a nudge, a bit of a push would change the behaviours. And I've said before in this podcast, I would be devastated if South Ayrshire Council said they're taking the food waste system away.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just can't imagine a residual waste system putting my food waste in there.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So I follow. I'll move on to inspiration, but I follow an inspirational speaker, Mel Robbins, and she does these 3 rules. She's got loads of rules because she's an inspirational speaker. Just makes up rules every day. But the 3 that I it stuck to me was that she says we don't all share the same values. So I love with that. So you and I. And Jane, we've been in this sector for 20 years, some years, 35 years.
30, some of us.
And we believe that's quite simple. We've given you guidance to do this with dry recycle. We've given you guidance for food, but people have got other priorities. The other rule that she mentions is that, if they wanted to, they would. And that's a bit. I'm not listening to your comms. If there's an issue about their children, they would. If it's an issue about their finance, they definitely would. If it's an issue about their house, they would. So, and the last one, she says, a no response is a response. We've been sending messages since I started in early 90s as a recycling officer, and still some people, that's a generation. Some people are now thinking, and you had the nail on the head there. That's not about me either. There's enough of my neighbours doing it. I don't need to. I need to do my bit as an individual. So I don't know how to square that up, but something definitely needs to be done.
I think the bit for me, Robert, is this disconnect between, there are some people absolutely adamant that every bit of plastic must be recycled, and we all know around this call that that's not sort of practical or sensible in all occasions. Whereas they've got that view with plastic, but then when you say to them, well, you're doing your food, there's really big environmental improvement, and they're like, oh, why would we want to do that? Mm-hmm. There's a total disconnect between these two things and people's perceptions.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was a recycling officer, and I would be chapping doors and the one-to-ones with people. And this is actually before we had food waste collection, but we're still virtually carrying out a waste audit on the doorstep, and basically the amount of people told me they didn't have any food waste. They're all magicians, you know. They're no. Well, they're all magicians, or they all had dogs. Oh, I'll give it to my dog, and of course you do. Yeah, and it just isn't a priority. And I think, and that's how I probably think we're not going to. We might get to 70%. We might, you know, the only low-hanging fruit left is the food. You know, the rest of the stuff is that mixed up. EPR will catch it up with bad design and stuff like that. But the areas that we don't recycle, it probably became broken into three areas. You know, there's people that are just uninclined, as you were kind of touching on. Some of my neighbours, you know, they're probably well-to-do. You know, they just don't think it's for them. There's those people that have, you know, chaotic lives, and you know that they have other priorities. And other people, actually, there's a group of people that actually think they're doing it right, and it's because of the designers. It's that, you know, it's like that famous crisp box with 3 or 4 different items in it. It's difficult, and I'm more optimistic than I've ever been, that if everything goes through EPR the way it should, you know, that will help us move into the, you know, the high regions. But we've been at this for 30 years. We've moved from 4% to, I don't know, nearly 50%, and we should be proud of that. But you know, there's a fair bit to go. But I think we need to also accept that we probably need to recognise there needs to be some sort of mechanical treatment of bits and pieces. The panacea that people in households that collect packaging waste and they've got busy lives and they've got to put them in a container or multi-containers, that's just not going to happen. People are not going to have no waste in the UK. It's really difficult to get to zero waste. When our bins here are out every 3 weeks, and we could do it every 6 because we've bought into it, and it's, you know. But my next door neighbour, they struggle after a fortnight. And to be fair, I'm not going to get in route about their bins, but you know, it's
why not? Robert, come on. A wee bit of dedication to the cause.
They'll be the exact same as me. They'll be the exact same as me in terms of purchase and, you know, size of family and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think there's things we can do better.
All right, good. Anyway, going back to you. Any particular favourite roles? Ever tempted to go back to being the bin man and get away from it all? And
No, I think I've probably been in the same role, I don't know, since for 20 years, you know, with bits of add-on. When I worked with Western Bartonshire, we added transport for a wee while because I had a synergy, and the synergy was that I was next door to the person that left, and so they basically added the word transport onto my job role. So one of my, I've done a lot of work with third sector that deliver stuff. So the stuff that we've been talking is industrial scale. It's 15,000 tonne of organic waste, 10,000 tonne of dry, 30,000 tonne of residual, 1,000 tonnes of wood, 2,000 tonnes of concrete. But when you work with the third sector, it's 100 tonne of this and 25 tonne of that. And I've probably worked with 6 over the last 20 years. That in terms of societal benefits, in terms of job training opportunities, helping people feel safe in their home, keeping them from being homeless, all those other added benefits for a couple of 100 tonne, it's been, you know, that they are really worthwhile, I have to say. And I think that sector will do a lot in terms of circular economy, kind of the sharing economy, the smaller things that need local community kind of buy-in, because frankly, we're a local authority and we're easy picking. But when you're working with a wee community group, you've got more respect for them, and you know, loads of people volunteer, and they buy into whatever they're trying to sell. So, as I say, some of the third sector organisations I've worked with, but very worthwhile. But one of in terms of my day job, is when I worked with Western Bartonshire, you remember I forgot it, the Strategic Waste Fund.
Yep.
So I had maybe only there 2 years. I was already on my second job title. I was fortunate enough to get Western Bartonshire, I don't know, £22 million for a small authority. And frankly, see if they didn't get that, they wouldn't move to, an alternate service. They wouldn't improve their HWRCs at any pace because there wasn't a driver to do it for them. They're a small authority, an area that significant deprivation, and they had other things to prioritise. So I was really chuffed that me and the guys and girls that I was working with at the time managed to pull together a package that got, that council £21 million, then I suppose allowed them a Kickstarter to collect the right materials.
So what, in your current role at the moment, what are you doing in your current role? What are you trying to achieve? What's your sort of end goal, as it were?
So what we decided 10 years ago was to split up from our operations and have strategy and contracts and operations, clearly. And myself, my boss, and a small team work within strategy and contracts. And the council recognised at the time that we needed to control contracts because, in terms of the costs, so keep a tighter hold on that, because, the councils are, as we know, that have a fair old economic strain, so they want us to make sure we're on that. And we mitigate any changes in terms of markets so it doesn't cost the council, that much. We also have a big commitment to municipalisation. And that, for us, it's our commercial waste services. We are constantly a third of the market in North Ayrshire to provide commercial waste services. So the more money we can get in, the less we've got to ask, the corporate lads for, and the more they can push that out to the vulnerable in our area. So our area kind of looks after that. We've just started rolling out RCV, refuse collection vehicle advertising, to other sectors, as opposed to just sending our message for income streams. In fact, we're working with one of our colleagues who basically started advertising on roundabouts just maybe, I don't know, about a year and a half ago, and that's like 100%. And what we do in North Ayrshire is we're quite committed to getting local companies. It's aimed at them. So you're driving on a roundabout, and you say, oh, there's an engineer, I can use him. He just stays round the corner, or she just stays round the corner, as opposed to phoning somebody in East Kilbride or, somewhere else that comes into the area, causes issues. Because it's most likely that engineer based in Irvine or Coinning will be employing people in Irvine and Coinning. So it's linked to the council's community wealth building approach. So all those things are interlinked. But the main thing is to look after the contracts while we're developing strategy. And then in the last 3 or 4 years, I suppose since COVID, we've been rammed with all the strategic options and changes and delays and stuff like that. I mean, there's 3 consultations out there now that are going to have a huge impact on the service, and there's a few that will have a limited impact, and that's just between
Have you read them
March.
all yet, Robert? Have you read them all yet? I've not got my way through them yet.
No, I haven't. I've allowed my colleagues to read one about the SEPA one, and we'll get in about the WE one and the circular economy one, because there's huge implications in there for local authorities, and actually there's opportunities linked to how we deliver EPR services, if that's what we see fit.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, isn't there? We were talking about it last time, the volume of the number of pages of each of these. I
think 250 pages, I think I worked out, for between the 2 SEPA consultations and the Zero Waste Scotland one.
Yeah, I genuinely, a lot of things were kicked along the road because of genuine delays. I get that, and now we're kind of catching up. And I really do believe, if you look at the timeline in the UK and Scotland between now and 2030, and it's going to be challenging to deliver all these things, and it's going to cross over into some sectors that they're going to feel a bit pressurised. But, some of the sectors have been quite irresponsible for many a year, and frankly been subsidised by public services. So they need to, go on with, being responsible organisations. And I really do think between now and 2030, waste services will not look anything like they've done in the past. Well, that's my hope anyway.
So Have you got any funny stories about any of your roles or jobs, or any disasters that you've had? You know, I'm thinking of funny stories that you might have experienced when you were out on your rounds as bin man. Or knocking on doors,
Well,
apart from little old lady with her biscuits.
The only time I ever get bitten was, believe it or not, my next door neighbour. So I used to work in this village that I stay in now, and every Tuesday I'd pass my house, so I'd nip in for a cup of tea about 10:30, and I'd pop back out at 10:11. So I was going round the next door, my next door neighbours, and I walked in there. This is when you're collecting bags from the back door. So I'm going through this alleyway, and this dog came out this kind of side door, and you can imagine how shocked that wee dog was. Wait a minute, what's this guy doing in my property? And I relayed it earlier on. What used to happen is bags would sit there for that whole week, and the dogs would sniff in it, pee in it, do other things. So I'm walking by this wee dog with what he's been playing with for the last week. Anyways, I'm sure it was a wee Scotty or Yorkshire kind of thing like that, and it jumped up and attached itself to my hip, and it wouldn't let go. And the wee lady that stayed there, Mrs. A, she's a wee God-fearing individual, and I have to say she was more shocked at some of the words that were coming out of my mouth. and I was going, geez, and loads of other things. Anyway, I eventually got the thing off, and I had to go to the doctors for a tetanus refresh. But I think that was the only time I ever get bitten with a dog.
It's memories of me. I used to have a paper round when I was young, and it's like, I remember this. You had to go round the back, and it was up a flight of stairs, and then you went up in like the middle of the house, and the doors were like almost in the house, sort of thing. And I knew there was a dog in this house, and they always left the door open. And you'd see the door open, and you were like, "Can I creep up the stairs, throw this paper in, and get back out the door, and get back behind that gate before this damn dog comes out and gets me?" But yes, there you go. So anyway, we've chatted a lot about the public recycling rates. Has it changed your view? Well, you've obviously been involved in waste for almost as long as me. Have you changed your opinions, habits outside the workplace, or have you just always done it yourself?
Yeah. Well, I suppose that links back to, so I'm from humble beginnings, right? So I grew up in poverty. And I don't say that lightly, because all my neighbours grew up in poverty. There's about 25% of my estate would be in poverty, and that's you can replicate that throughout Scotland in every village. But what I remember from my days when my mother could afford to give me some money to participate, and I mean to participate in being a tearaway and just hang outside at the chip shop, because that was your mobile phones back in the day. So it was I remember it was a typical house and estate. There was a chip shop, a news agent, if MD remembers news agents. They used to sell newspapers, and a wee mini supermarket. And I've got a bag of chips. And my mate walked out the mini supermarket, and he was less burdened by poverty, shall we say. And he came out with, you remember the wee small glass bottle of Perrier water? Won design awards. It's like a wee pear bottle. And he came out of the shop with that, and it was a wee glass bottle. And this is I don't know, early or late 70s. And I remember saying to, I said, how much was that? And it was like 15 pence. And I think I'd paid 14 pence for a bag of chips. And I just couldn't believe it. I remember saying to him, it's water. Can you not just go home and put your head under the sink? Look, we all do. He said, no, this is lovely. And by all accounts, it's got a lovely kind of flavour, sparkly and all that. And I remember saying to him, excuse my language, I remember saying to my other mate at the time, see, if you ever see me with a bottle of water, shoot me. And so I've always had this, I very rarely buy bottled water. And I know at the time in the 70s, water wasn't as good as it is just now in every area. But frankly, we all pay water companies a fortune to provide us with drinking water, as well as the other sewage and stuff like that they do. And we shouldn't be buying water. Frankly, I don't care what businesses we let down. We shouldn't be buying water in Scotland. Clearly, if you're abroad or if you're in the back of beyond, you might need the odd one. But I mean, I've seen some of my friends coming out of supermarkets with cases of water. And I just can't get my head around that. So you imagine if now that we're in this culture of banning things, like the vapes last week, which, make no doubt about it, our sector has benefited from populist politics because there's an election coming. There's no way that would have been banned, and I would imagine the lobbyists who are working on behalf of the vape sector are now sacked because they've not done their job, and it's really beneficial to us. I'm very happy that the ban vapes. So maybe we should be considering banning bottled water, because we're taking it for A, transporting it, to B, for somebody to drink it when the water's already there. It's already arriving through your tap. I just think that's amazing. It's something that we should consider at some point. It's maybe too far left or too far right, whatever it is.
Well, it's a good, you can tell why they have such a good marketing campaign then. Yeah. Buy water. You don't get it from your tap, you can buy it from the shops, and it'll cost you £1.50p for a plastic bottle of water that you could have got for nothing.
Well, if you think about plastics as well, I'm on this tranche, in terms of the emission trading stuff. So the point will be to try and get fossil fuels away from EFW, and an easy way to do that, and I'm going to ban something else now, is basically to ban soft drinks being sold in plastic bottles, because that'll save billions, get in the system and keep them away from EFW. Because if you think about it, if you were to ban plastic bottles that contain soft drinks during the impact assessment, the question would be asked, how is this market still going to get to market? How are these organisations still going to get to market? But they already do that in cans, in tins, in glass bottles. There's absolutely no need.
Having said that, Robert, I was in University of West Scotland at their facility at Blantyre, lecturing I was doing the lecturing there for the switch course, the UWS switch course, and I was meeting somebody for lunch, and I was wanting something to drink, and normally I would take a bottle with me, but I'd taken my coffee cup, my reusable coffee cup, but I hadn't taken a bottle. And I was like, I could do with some water. And I couldn't find it. And eventually said to me, it's that over there. It's like a milk carton. So it's basically water in a Tetra Pak.
Yeah.
So it's cardboard and plastic. So yes, in theory, they're using less plastic, but then, the recycling.
Anyway.
Well, I was then left with a dilemma at the university as to which bin my Tetra Pak should go in, because their choices were plastic in cans, food waste, or residual. So if I wanted to dispose of my Tetra Pak at the university, I would have had to put it in the residual.
Yeah, I mean,
so
you don't need
that joined up bit, isn't it?
I got the golf, the Open and the Scottish Open quite a lot, and they've started selling. Well, they started water pipes. And bring your own bottle, but also, if you need, you haven't got a bottle. They sell water in cans. In cans, it's can and aluminium. It's that's 100% recyclable. You can keep going round that loop and loop and loop with plastic canny. It's just that those that work on behalf of the plastic industry are very good at what they do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anyway, all work and no play. What do you do to get away from the day job?
So I suppose I have a
dog.
Well, I've got a dog. I'm just thinking of the passions. So I'm quite passionate. Clearly, I'm very passionate about my family, including my dog, my daughters. That keeps me busy. Golf keeps me busy. I'm quite passionate about this sector, and I'm passionate about the mindfulness gap. So mindfulness gap, I set it up 3 or 4 years ago to, I suppose, formalise my approach to mindfulness. And mindfulness sometimes gets a bad press, I think. Some people think it's, praying to Buddha, breath work, meditation all the time, but it can be they're tools. They're tools you can use to get yourself in the here and now, but it also includes, walking, sports, Tai Chi, Qigong, whatever gets you in the here and now. So I set that up to just try and give small tip about how we can, improve our, day-to-day, work life, because I probably needed it for my 30s, and I was probably doing it informally, just, being more mindful. It's easier if you just say mindful as opposed to mindfulness, but, more mindful in my approach to everything. And it's, I suppose, the way you would probably understand it, Alistair, it's more like a safe system of work for your life. Just approach stuff, get ready for stuff. At some point in my life, we're going to have highs and lows. We're going to have negative stuff and positive stuff happen to us, and we just need to be aware of that. It will stop that curve of depression. And I don't mean clinical depression. You're being depressed, being low. If you're pragmatic enough to understand it's potentially coming and get yourself in a space that you deal with that, it's really about, I suppose, improving your resilience. And the only way you improve your resilience is to learn from past errors, past mistakes, past negative issues that have happened to you. So I'm on Instagram and all the other social media platforms, and I basically just put out 2 or 3 messages a week. And every time I put messages out, it's part of my practice, because I learn something. I learn something new. Because I did some formal training 2 years ago. So I'm a certified mindfulness teacher, whatever that is. And I felt after that I still needed to, learn, my trade. I suppose like a teacher, you don't just get thrown in as a teacher. It's very an informal learning process, but it's really trying to show people that being mindful, you can have a better journey.
Good. I've got a wee confession for you, Robert.
Right.
Me and you have talked about this in the past, and I've always been a bit, let's say a bit cynical about the whole practice. So this year I have actually, I started and I've stopped. I need to resurrect it. I've got a wee thing where I ask myself 3 questions in the morning and 3 questions in the afternoon, and it's actually quite interesting. It does make you think a bit of a different way. And
yeah, I can actually take it back to, I don't know, about 15 years ago, and I'm no longer there, so I can talk about it. We had a contractual dispute when I was at Western Barnshire with a big player, and because myself, my boss, my director are quite keen not to see public money getting wasted for no reason. We felt, if I could say this, we felt we were getting screwed. So we then went a series of maybe 5 or 6 meetings. There would be us 3, a procurement officer, a lawyer, and then there'd be 4 for that organisation, a lawyer, and they would come up from England. And I think we had 4 or 5 meetings after over 5 weeks. And we both came from it in an entrenched position. We were trying to do what we thought was right with public money, and I know what happened with them. They had a new chief exec, and he promised that they would make 5% more or 7% more, and he basically instructed everybody to put the prices up, even fixed price contracts. No, it's a fixed price contract. So we had this discussion, and see, after a couple of them, I felt ill because we were getting quite personal. We weren't having a reasonable conversation with the humans across it, and they were doing the same. And so we kind of sat down and we said, listen, we're not in the business of putting companies out of business. So we need to compromise in some way. We need to understand. So we went a kind of an open book approach. And they came along with that. And then they basically agreed a compromise that if the market went back to A or B, we would go back to the old gate fee. So we sat down and I've used that model ever since. It's missing it. See all that pain in the middle? It's saying, right, where are we going to get to? How do we get to it? And how can we get there without having an impact on people's mental health? And that's being mindful. So I use that in my business, in here, in my work, use it in my family life, because it's just getting it. We're all going to have anxious periods, depressed periods, stuff like that. It's just using whatever tool. If you say ask the 3 questions, what for you, that's fine. I had a guy on the phone this morning ask me about an app. A guy I'll not mention his name. Anyway, he was looking for support. I pointed him in the direction of the app, and I said, pick the gentleman's name. the gentleman's voice, because he'll put you to sleep. And the guy who's asking for advice really needs to relax. So there's lots of tools out there. There's lots of apps out there. The world's full of professionals that are making money mindfulness. But to me, it's common sense. You probably do it informally. You don't think you can't be crabby and angry all the time. And I've looked at you a few times, Alistair, and sometimes you would crab at me, frankly.
Not that bad, surely, Robert. Not that bad.
I tell you, sometimes I can out-crab at Alistair, so there we go.
Oh, there we go. A good team. A good team.
I mean, to me, the mindfulness is quite important, because I had quite a few issues a while back. And I always find that actually exercise and that sort of thing takes me into a space where all I can do is, I've got to be, like, they talk about being in that moment, don't they? But cycling and swimming, outdoor swimming, and once you get out in that cold water, you're not going to do anything else except worry about which bits are the most cold. But and I kind of think the strategies that work for different people, isn't it? And it's kind of like trying to make sure you've matched the strategy with what you need at that particular time.
Oh, absolutely, Jane. I mean, when I probably went through, a stressful period, 4 or 5 years ago, and I was doing meditation at night, the use of an app. And I found it really difficult at first, but then I thought, oh God, I'll see how that works. And sometimes you've got to get a crack. I don't particularly use meditation. It's more about a way of life, and approaching everything in a mindful manner. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, by the way. I do sweat at some of the small stuff that I shouldn't sweat, as my wife will confirm. But it's about trying to better today than I was yesterday. It's probably as simple as that. And I'm very comfortable with it. And I get there could be cynical people there, but they might even unknowingly use own tools. Sometimes in Scotland, we used to use this tool called alcohol to deal with that all the time. And look what that's got is we self-medicating. So use anything you use to be in a kind of a mindful space will help you.
There you go. Yeah. We'll share the details of Mindfulness Gap on the show notes for you, Robert.
Please do that.
We will.
So what's next for you and your career going forward? Do you see yourself retiring and doing a few mindfulness stuff?
I was going to say, he must be getting the age of retiring. He was talking about lifting bins at 1970s.
Well, to be fair, Alistair, I can still lift bins, you just stick to running up hills, meaningless hills. So the plan for me is probably to get ready for retirement, have some sort of succession plan in place for my employers. Because I'm that conscientious, so that they'll comfortably let me go. And I think you're right, actually, Jane. So I do believe, and I found out maybe in my 20s that I've only got so much capacity. So one of them is this sector. Love this sector. Love sticking up for the public sector as well. One is the family, one is the golf, and one is the mindfulness gap and poetry. But I recognise I can't do them all, So frankly, see, Monday to Friday, I'm doing 45, 50 hours in this stuff, public sector, try to get it right and stuff like that. Maybe a Saturday morning, I'll kind of focus on golf, and then quiet times, maybe during the week at the weekend, do some poetry. And in between that, my family are no more than 6 feet away from me. So I think, should I retire, that will leave some space to extend, the approach to the mindfulness gap, maybe, holding kind of training sessions, being a speaker, various things, developing that a bit further. But I really need to be honest, I need to find some capacity to do that, because I was thinking this before I come on, and clearly I'm not in the engineering sector, I'm not in the hospitality sector, I'm not in the road sector. There's so many people that join this sector, they don't mean it, and they hang about for 30 or 40 years. And it's quite, and I think it's because it's what we seem to do. It's quite dynamic. It's always changing. You know, it's no. But I think when people look on it, they just think it's about emptying that green bin outside my door, and that's all it is. You know, there's layers and layers and layers and layers, and it's just when it's been like that since I started, and I suppose the management side and the office side. I remember during some of my education talks, we would say there's been 60 pieces of legislation from Europe in the last 9 years, and 25 of them are linked to waste. It's not as much as that now in terms of the UK, but it's just always moving. So I think, I'd like to get ready for that in 2 or 3 years, and hopefully I can afford it. Maybe start doing the lottery, a bit late, and fire off to the sunset. Just like, all the mentors before me.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm thinking my retirement. I've been thinking of my retirement just recently. It's going to be a while, mind.
And I mean, as you know, our listeners now get 3 or 4 jobs to fill.
Don't
even go there.
That's okay. Is there any fact you want to share about your job, or something that people might not know? I mean, that's the thing with our industry, is we know lots of things, but people aren't always aware of it. Is there anything particular you think, apart from 30% food waste in people's bins and get rid of it?
Well, there's a fact. I'll tell you this one. The same fact. There's 1.3 billion tonnes of food disposed of throughout the world. A lot is to do with farming, processing, but the vast majority is to do with us as human beings making their own decision, not planning. And at the same time, there is 800 million people undernourished, and 650 million people like me that are obese or on the obese thing. And there's an imbalance there. And I don't know how you do that on a global scale. I'm sure that specialists and exceptional people will come up with some models. It's going to be very difficult, but it's also linked to, I suppose, people's entitlement and the country to be staying as opposed to other countries. So, I mean, I just think that's abysmal what we do with food waste. And I would hope, whilst I retire, to be reading up in some better solutions that can nourish people right throughout the world.
Absolutely. All right, we're getting near the end, Robert. One piece of your favourite slang or dialect or expression. I was going to say you've actually used quite a lot of Ayrshire language here. I'm almost tempted that we need some subtitles to go out with this podcast for some of them. But any favourite bits that you find yourself using all the time, or
No, not so much. Not so much now. I'm just because you've made me relaxed, Alistair. You did say relax. So maybe one of the things I was talking about earlier, or we were talking about earlier on, back in the day, you used to, as a binman, you used to collect pots and pans and various other things because of the metal, the value of the metal. And on the vehicles, there used to be a wee side cage, and you were allowed to do that for some reason. And in East Ayrshire or in Carmarthenshire, that was called scran.
I've heard that. Yeah.
So, and you'd share your scran with other guys, but other places it's called scoosh and various other elements. So we'll need to do a map, up the east coast, down the west coast, and see what they're called. So that's what it was. And what you did in this. Clearly the 60s, 70s and 80s. And I wasn't there in the 60s and 70s, right? But you basically shared that out at the end of the week. You would go to a local scrappy, and there used to be many. You would get £4 or £5 and share that between the work group.
See, I would think of scran as being food, like
food, yeah.
Staff would come in and talk about coming in and get their scran, their lunch or their breakfast or whatever.
That's the good people of Carmarthenshire back in the day.
I've never heard of it, so that's a good one for me.
There you go, scran or scoosh. Quite happy with that.
Never heard of scoosh either. Not in that context.
No.
I think I've maybe heard the scoosh. I think that's one that's but definitely scran. I would definitely So finally, from me, Robert, you've been going to give a magic wand for the waste sector. What would you like to use it for?
I'll just go back to elements of EPR. I think there's not so much for the waste sector.
You've used that about 5 times. Extended producer responsibility, just
Correct.
in case our listeners don't know.
Oh no, all your listeners know. They're very erudite. I've seen the list of them. No. So if you look at some of the, you see it in the WE consultation. If you look at some of the wording and the PE part and the other EPRs, frankly, this is a personal view. I would EPR everything that's it's no stuck down. And I'll use a couple of examples. We bought a mattress. You've seen the price of mattresses? It's the same price as your first house. It's absolutely shocking. And what happened is that company delivered them, because nobody's putting mattresses in the back of their Mini and taking them away from the shop. So they delivered it to me. And I asked them to take mine away, and they were one of the companies, because it was online, they were one of the companies that couldn't take that away. So see, apart from online companies, which there are many, but they've got a contract with people to deliver them with larger vans. When you go to a house to deliver a mattress, it's likely that you're taking the mattress away. So take it away. Just have a return system. So I would definitely do that. And while we're on EPR, some of the wording in the WE regs, or the potential changes to WE regs, and as I say, the packaging EPR is linked to cost neutral for local authorities. Should we be the collector of small WE, or full cost recovery if we should be the collector of paper? Why should we just be cost neutral? If you want, if any of these organisations, any of these producer compliance schemes want to get the private sector to do it, there'll be an add-on, there'll be a markup. Nobody's doing that for charity. And I think, bear in mind that local authorities in this sector are struggling for funding. It should maybe be an EPR fee plus 5%, 6%, 10%, and we should think about it as an environmental gain in terms of planning. You're paying a wee bit more for all the stuff that's went before, because there's businesses that are now at the stage they were irresponsible, for want of a better description. They're doing better now, and they're getting to that stage that they want to do good. Well, this would be good, and you imagine that money being invested in local communities throughout the UK. So I think we need to try and have that conversation. The narratives, it's no floating down that particular paragraph, but it's something that should be considered. Why should local authorities do something for the private sector? See if you remember when the cleansing, and you will remember, Alistair, because I think you're actually older than me now, when the cleansing was developed back in...
That really makes me worried, actually, because I'm older than Alistair, so... Blimey, Robert, you must be really young.
Thanks. It's a particular gene. No, when the cleansing services were developed, Alistair, they were developed for the right reason, and in terms of public health and stuff like that. But at that time, businesses weren't making billions of pounds of profit. They weren't quite legally paying accountants millions of pounds to reduce their tax take, which would improve their shareholders, who are getting supported with banks, who are now back to giving people 200% bonuses. The world's completely changed. It's all right, the local authority will pick that up under various acts, and the public purse will pay that up. Now we're subsidising various sectors, and that's fine if it comes from any of our governments, and that's what we're going to do. But just fund this correctly. But if we're not, we shouldn't be subsidising any organisation that's making millions of pounds on the back of us collecting their waste, especially when they haven't the first clue what to do with it.
I think your ideal example of that, Robert, is what you talked about earlier on about the vapes. These companies are making millions on the back of vapes, and they put no infrastructure in to do anything about them.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a bit cynical about the ban. I take your view that it's political, but also, I would have liked to thought some big retailers would have maybe stepped forward and said the government's going to ban that, so we're going to stop selling these things. And nobody, there's been a deathly silence since the announcement. Nothing's,
I don't know if you noticed, but the week before the Scottish Government took the position to reduce the promotions and the communication stuff, and that was a really good step, because that's why that grew so quick. That whole industry, the multi-billion-pound industry, is because you could promote them in the front shops or window as opposed to putting them behind the door like other tobacco products. And frankly, that's what they fell asleep at the wheel. That's what they needed to do, and that industry wouldn't have this issue. But I mean, it just grew. Oh, as I say, it must be a £2 billion industry within a couple of years. That's super stuff. And I think we as a sector have certainly benefited for that legislation. And it'd be great not to read about less £30 million fires and £20 million fires, but we still need to get into that area of batteries, toys with batteries in it, because they're things that are arriving on the market that probably shouldn't be, and they'll have the same impact on our services. Clearly not in the health of children, which that stuff's linked to. But it'd be very interesting if you just look at, because we're meant to be a progressive society and we're meant to be disruptors. That the vaping ban is probably the first bit of disruption we've seen for a long time. We've been kicking things along the long grass and waiting for timelines for 3 or 4 years. So let's move on with being disruptors.
I just can't wait for your ban on bottled water, Robert, to come in. That'll be hopefully later on this year.
Listen, hey, if you can't get to a tap, just give us a shout and I'll give you some guidance.
Yeah, there's plenty of taps. We can give a 3-word location for each tap.
Yeah. Get water here.
I know. Finally, Robert, this is your last question. What advice would you give to the younger generation coming into waste management? What's the sort of thing you would say to them to make them want to see this as a sexy industry?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it is a sexy industry, as you know.
As you can see from all of us.
You've got to pick a particular thickness of fleece to be in this industry, I think. We've got a micro fleece as you get older. So no, in terms of so we take on, or we've taken on loads of young people under 30, and it's really reading up about the services that we do currently, and I try to understand what direction we're going. Back in the day when I joined, we did the HNC at Stowe, and the HNC is still kicking about over at Fife. We try and send somebody there, but the HNC is quite, I suppose, it's quite difficult for if somebody pops in with a degree. They're not going to learn a lot, but it gives them the background, the services. So I mean, it's really, I would just suggest that they read as much as they can, try and shadow us, and that's what we try and organise. Shadowing our teams, shadowing other teams, environmental health officers, streets uniforms. One of the particular issues I find with new people come in is that they feel waste service, we do everything. Oh yeah, that's our job, and there's lines. For what we have the legal obligation to, what we have the powers to do. And sometimes we've got householders speaking to managing new team members, and once they get hold of you, if you're a council tenant, they'll basically say, "Oh, can you get my door number sorted? That's broken, or can you help me with my neighbour because she moved my bin 3 weeks ago?" And there's lines, and housing are responsible for a lot of things, and I just try to say, "Yep, as a council, that's what we do." So factor that out to one of your colleagues in housing or social work or something like that. So just try to bring them in to understand what we're here for, and I suppose what we're funded for, because we've had limited funds for many a year for work groups for our service.
Well, thank you, Robert. That's us. We've exhausted our line of questioning. I think you're actually the first person that started off their career as a bin man. So, So thank you for that. It's only taken us to episode 30 to find such a person. So there you go.
I think did David Barmer not want to be a bin man? Obviously.
I think he maybe, but I don't think he was. I don't think he was.
No.
He wasn't a bin man for 5 years anyway. Put it that way.
Definitely not. I think we went to
Yeah, but I think you've got to remember, if every young boy in the 70s wanted to be a binman, they were very interesting.
I used to watch a bin lorry going by the door. I used to remember watching binmen get loaded and stuff.
And frankly, that only came back to me many years later. And I went, oh God, I used to do that. And kids do that now. You maybe been in a toy shop, but you've got the wee kind of refuse collection trucks, loads of them.
Yeah.
Our neighbours, they moved to the next estate, we still keep in touch, and their youngest loves bin lorries.
There you go.
It's amazing.
There you go. Your new recruit in 20 years' time. Or 15 years' time, maybe. Anyway, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated.